these judges. They have so much to lose. Women don't have these things to lose,
Yeah, we
and are
do. Can you say that a woman doesn't have equity in the house to
I can say
lose?
that because I've been practicing for 20 years.
But
She's disagreeable. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Mental Breakdown channel. It's Nick Davenport, aka Mr. Mental Muscle, your favorite applied psychologist. And today we're going to do something different for the new year. This is the first video I posted in 2023, and I want to try a different format. I'm going to do a reaction to the Soscast with Adam Sosnick, and it has the lead attorney, and Pearl was on it as well. But the lead attorney and Adam had a back and forth talking about personality traits, one particularly agreeableness and disagreeableness. And I said, perfect for me. You know, I love personality theories. It's one of my specialties. So I said, let's check this out. So with that being said, I hope you like this new format. We're going to go through it. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We're here to break down different topics in psychology and apply them to real world scenarios. With that being said, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and let's get to the video.
But who you're having a kids with and who you're marrying is literally the most important decision in your life. So from a male perspective, Ross and TLA, do you think it is a bet if it's a binary option, would it be better to marry woman A, who's like a boss babe, modern woman, feminist, almost like worker, versus traditional woman, housewife, more conventional type of women? If those were the only two options, what would you prefer?
Yeah, it really depends on the couple's individual personalities.
So yeah, let's stop right here. So personality, that's something I've dealt with for years. It's one of my specialties, mental performance, psychology, that's what I do. But when it comes to personality, that's the study of behavior, traits, characteristics that can explain why we do what we do, how do we adapt to different situations. And Adam asked, which women would you choose in the lead attorney, or TLA, what they call them? He was going to say personality. Now, before we get into what he's about to say, you got to understand personality is not a catch-all term, how a lot of people use it. They'll say, oh, I want a man or I want a woman with a nice personality. But personality is more than just a noun. It's actually a description of a person's traits, how do they adapt to situations, how do they handle stress, pressure, how they work with others, and many more. So understanding this in a person will help you get to know them better. And if you can see how they're acting in these regards, that'll help you choose them better. Because a lot of people, they don't really look at this. When they think personality, they really only explain, I would say, agreeableness, being more nice, friendly, cooperative. And that's what TLA is going to talk about more so. So we got to go further than this, but let's see what he says.
Like, I've done this for so long, looking at divorces and marriages for 2 decades. I see it a lot differently than normal people who are not in the industry. And what I've come to see is that if two people are really going to work long term, then their personalities have to line up. And one of the biggest factors in terms of personality, you can just say, for example, is the woman's disagreeability.
So this is very interesting because I have a colleague, Dr. Ty Tashiro, who's wrote a book called The Science of Happily Ever After. And he talks about tons of different traits and aspects and the science of how it takes to have a successful relationship or have a not successful relationship, because you need to know both sides. And he talks about agreeableness being the best predictor of long-term relationship satisfaction. So when we say satisfaction, this means they surveyed couples, men and women, to see how over time they adapted and adjusted while being in that relationship or that marriage. And they saw that the people who scored higher on agreeableness tend to say they were enjoying marriage much more, because we know there's a high divorce rate. About 50% of marriages end in divorce. And he's talking about women in particular, because about 80 to 90% of divorces come from the women. Now, it's just to say, not that women just want to divorce more, but if you look at the odds, if 50% of marriage in itself are going to end in divorce, which is half, that's a lot. And if that 50% of the people that do get divorced is typically going to be the woman who does it. So this is something to take into consideration. So that agreeableness trait, he's going to describe a little bit more, and I'll break it down so it can make more sense.
Right. And so you'll have a lot of women who are, the boss bitch and all this and all that, and they're really hard driving in their jobs, because you kind of have to be hard driving in the business world if you want to get stuff done. The issue is that the level of disagreeability that is required to succeed in the workplace sometimes can make it very difficult to negotiate a long-term relationship. And so if the woman is going to have a high level of disagreeability, that is going to cause some instability in a long-term relationship or in marriage. It might be okay if the husband's level of disagreeability is higher. What you want a gap between the husband's level of disagreeability and the wife's level, right? Now, if you start getting too high on that, then a partnership isn't going to work at all because each person is just looking out for themselves. So you want a couple, ideally, you want both parties to have a lower level of disagreeability,
Mhm.
but you kind of want the man's disagreeability to be higher than the woman's.
Perfectly said. The lead attorney's been practicing law for I think a little over 20 years, but he definitely has some knowledge of psychology. So he mentioned that disagreeableness. So that's basically saying you butt heads, you're more likely going to say no to something, you're going to speak up when you don't get your way. So this is not necessarily a man trait, but he mentioned how in the business world you have to be disagreeable. Imagine a person said yes to every deal that got thrown at them. It's not going to be a good business because you're going to get some bad deals or people are going to try to snake or stab you in the back. This is just how it goes. I've been in business for years and this happened to me numerous times. And I'm not even that high on agreeableness. So you can just imagine a person who is a yes man or yes woman. So you can see how in the workplace that could be a necessary trait to disagree, but in the romantic relationship, not so much. And just like Dr. Ty Tashiro said, it's a great predictor when someone is agreeable, that's more likely to cooperate, more likely to get along with others, more likely to let someone lead them. It's good for relationships. But he said they both need it. And that's key that he said. I'm glad he said it. Both parties need some level of agreeableness. It's just that the discrepancy between the man and woman, the man might want to be a little higher because, yes, you can argue women can take charge, they can be bosses. That's not what we're getting at. A lot of people have a problem with this and they get triggered when they hear that because they assume it means if someone's leading, then someone has to be subservient. And that's true, but that's not a bad thing. You look at the military, you have generals, you have captains, you have people who are higher ranking, and there's always someone above the next person. Even in, say, sports, I work with a lot of pro athletes. LeBron James, for example, I like I work with a lot of pro athletes, and they all have coaches that are usually nowhere big or as talented as they are. But guess what? They can be able to humble themselves, follow the coach's lead because they're in charge. Now, will they butt heads? Sure. But like you said, it's not that you're 100% either or. And I think this is a problem with personality theories that people get confused on trait theory versus type theory. Trait theory is what we're talking about. That's a spectrum of traits. So if there's agreeableness, then the other side of the spectrum is disagreeableness. There's extroversion. The other side of the spectrum is introversion. There's conscientiousness. On the other side is more sporadic behavior, thinking a little more messier. But the point is, you're not one or the other. You fall somewhere on the line of that spectrum. So if you're high on agreeableness, meaning you're more to this side, it doesn't mean you can't be disagreeable. Look at personality as a whole as your default mode. It doesn't mean that you're going to always be this. The situation will change how you act. But the problem is people get caught up in you're either this or that. That's a type theory. Now, when you think of, say, maybe the Myers-Briggs, that's probably one of the most popular personality tests. This is what we're talking about. That's a type theory, meaning you're either introverted or you're extroverted. It's not that black and white. Also, astrology, like that's not a personality theory, but a lot of people use it to describe people's behaviors. So I guess the problem with that is, once again, and it's a lot more irrational. There's not much science based on astrology, but if you believe in that, it's more so saying you're this type of person, this type of sign, and these traits that go with it, you're just that. But in actuality, we contain aspects of all these traits. And it's just a matter of how much on the spectrum or the scale do we fall. So getting back to the point, you can have a successful relationship when there is a leader. And I guess getting into the traditional roles, a lot of people don't like that. That's a whole different topic. But I honestly think that there should be that give and take. You're not always going to be the number one scorer in a game. It does not make you a leader. You can step up. The woman can step up when she needs to. The man can step up when he needs to. But the point is, there has to be someone leading the ship. It doesn't mean they disregard everyone else's thoughts and opinions, but you got to be mindful of everyone.
Okay,
Um,
so follow up. Well, it's funny. We were talking about how personalities need to mesh earlier, but disagreeability. I want to kind of stay there for a second. For a man to be disagreeable, why does that benefit a man? And what is it like? What are some other adjectives or descriptions if a woman is disagreeable? So I kind of want to unpack why it benefits a man, but why it's worse for a woman in a relationship.
It benefits a man in so many different ways. You know, the
Like,
com-
I'm disagreeable as fuck, bro.
and that's awesome. And really that's the way it should be. Disagreeability will protect a man. Men a lot of times will have this chip in them to exalt a woman, to put her on a pedestal, to call her a unicorn, and they will start making sacrifices that they would not make for anyone else. And one of these huge sacrifices can involve marriage, certainly a marriage with no prenup, and they're setting themselves up for a huge fall on the back end when they get into divorce court. And I have represented tons of men, tons of women over 20 years, and I have seen the destruction that takes place. Like, no one has seen more men break down in tears while their kids get taken away, the equity in their home gets stolen, their retirement, their pension gets stolen.
So you can see how disagreeableness, like I said, as a trait in the men's realm is beneficial because you don't want to be at a point where you're losing sight of your goals. And we come to like applied psychology and how we make sense of this of the real world. Think about things you do. Imagine you're working on your business and you have a friend that says, "Hey, I got this idea. I want to start a car cleaning business. I know you're doing your thing, but can you help me out?" They know you're a hard worker. They know that you're driven, dedicated, and you're a good friend. So imagine if you're high on agreeableness. This is how this really would go. You're probably going to say, "Well, okay, I know it's going to take some time away from my thing. Or if it doesn't, I got to put more hours into it later that day because I'm doing your stuff." Guess what happens? You get stretched thin, you start losing sight of your vision, or if you don't lose sight, it just gets harder to do your vision because now you're trying to serve more than one master. And I've done this before in the past, and it's not always the best scenario to be in. And it's like with relationships, it's kind of the same thing. It's not saying that you can't be in a good relationship and still pursue your endeavors and your goals and dreams. It's not saying that. It's just that that give and take has to be there. Now, when it comes to the dynamic between men and women, then we might ask, well, where does that come in? Basically, the man's expected to do a little bit more. We can argue all we want, and I know people get into the red pill and all that good stuff. We can argue all we want, but typically the burden of performance on the man is typically higher. You expect to pay for certain things, and it's not to say women can't pay for their own things, but let's be real. Most women want a guy who can lead and be in his masculine role and masculine frame, but it's hard to do that if you're always going with everyone's flow and agreeing to everything, and you can end up in very bad predicaments. Have you ever, think about this, have you ever been in a scenario where you knew you had something to do? Let's say, matter of fact, let's take that back. Let's say you didn't have anything to do and you just want to chill. Today's Saturday, I'm recording this. You just want to chill all day. You didn't want to get off the couch. You want to watch some Netflix or whatever. That's great. Fine. Relax. Get some me time, right? And then someone says, "Hey, last minute, can you help me move today?" Let's be real. We all have that friend, or we've been the friend, but you know, moving is not a in and out type of thing. That's an all day gig. And depending on how many people you have to help, it's going to be very tiring, very strenuous. I'm going to ask you, what are you doing? Are you saying yes? Are you saying no? Now, me, I know in the past I've said yes. No one had other plans, or even if I didn't have plans. It doesn't mean that I'm agreeable. In that case, I was. But the point is, you got to know these things. That's why I love personality theories and just understanding them, because people might say, "What's the point of all this?" Like when I studied psychology, I dabbled in a little bit of everything. And that's why when I made Mind Body One, I literally pinpoint different aspects of mental behavior, performance because of this. But when it came to personality, I just loved it so much because it's more so explaining the role of personality traits and how they affect us and our environment and how we adapt to different situations. But it also helps with being able to understand if you are this type of trait and you're high on it and it's being detrimental, how should you behave? If I know in a scenario where I shouldn't be as agreeable because I have other obligations or I just don't want to do it, I know I got to say no. But someone who's not as aware or self-aware about what they are is going to not likely disagree because they don't know that they're doing this all the time. Sometimes just, why do I always just give people the shirt off my back and don't realize it? Once you're aware, that's half the battle. The other half is building the behavior, building the mindset to get better at it. So you just got to understand these traits. And this is just 1 out of 5 because this comes from the big 5-factor model. If you're not familiar with that, Jordan Peterson talks about it a lot. It's one of the most, I guess, solidified personality models out there. There's other ones. The one we use when I did my research, we used the Hexaco model, which is similar to the big 5, but has one extra. It's called honesty and humility. So that's the 6, but the other 5 are openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism or emotionality. The N in neuroticism can also be emotionality. But basically, each trait has a different disposition on how you are and how you adapt to the world around you and how you can better perform. And that's what my business, Mind Body One, is all about. And that's what I want to do with my clients, help them perform in whatever scenario and setting they're in.
By these judges, they have so much to lose. Women don't have these things to lose.
Yeah, we do. How can you say that a woman
She's
doesn't have equity
disagreeable.
in a house to
I can say
lose?
that because I've been practicing for 20 years.
But I know, but women also can make money. Like there could be marriages where the woman makes more money.
Listen, there
And-
are the LeBron James of women, all right?
Mhm.
But I'm not talking about these special cases. I'm
Yeah.
talking about in general. If you want to sit here and tell me that women in general lose their kids, you're crazy.
No, but
Of course, they
Very
don't.
disagreeable.
well, some women do if they're like.
Stop. So this is a perfect example of being disagreeable. He, TLA, the lead attorney, is a 20-year law vet. He's practiced in family court, specifically with things like child support. So he knows this topic very well. And he even knows a little psychology, like I said. The lady he's talking to does not have that experience. Does she know people been in scenarios like that? Sure, we all have. But this is a problem when people are disagreeable, especially for the wrong reasons at the wrong time. They're going to speak up, and you're not going to add something as a value to the conversation, or you're going to take away from it because now you're getting into this bickering, this debating. And think about being on a team with someone like that. If you're a former athlete, imagine a teammate like that, or a coworker. You probably have a coworker who disagrees or doesn't go with the flow. They're the type to combat everyone. Sometimes seems just to be a contrarian. So this is why, in this case with her, she's free to speak her mind. That's not what I'm saying. But it's like, if you understand that you're very disagreeable, you might tend to say, you know what, I'm in a meeting or I'm in this kind of cooperation with someone. And let me dial it back a little bit because now you understand this isn't going to be that helpful for me to get better.
Like alcohol
No,
abuse or
not in
something.
general.
I think what you're saying, there's exceptions and there are rules.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know if
And-
Madison was intentionally being disagreeable. Respect.
See, he
Define
even called it out.
disagreeable for women.
Yeah.
Like I understand, I can appreciate why it is important for a man to be disagreeable. Meaning, like if you're a nice guys finish last. Like you kind of like for a man, you have to kind of go through some shit. You need to be like, It's more important for a man to say no, put his foot down, than just be a yes man to a lot of women. 100%. Thank you for kind of explaining that. For the women, why is it important to not be with a woman who's disagreeable? And define those characteristics, if you would.
For a woman,
For a woman, you said the worst thing that a woman could be is disagreeable, and that's what ruins relationships.
It might
I'm trying to
ruffle some
understand what that
feathers.
is exactly.
well, if you have a very disagreeable woman, what you'll find is that there's a lot of butting heads in the relationship. And each person kind of wants to wear the pants, and decisions, even small decisions, turn out to be huge issues that cause problems in the relationship. But even more than that, what is deadly is that the woman can take advantage of the man, and she has the state that can back her up on it, right? And so men just have so much to lose. And every now and then you'll hear a woman say, "Oh, well, women have stuff to lose too." But if you drill down on it, you'll learn that it's the vast minority of women who come out on the short end of the stick. And the women who come out on the short end of the stick so many times deserve it because they're on meth or they're on crack cocaine. You know, people will say, "Oh, well, women can lose their kids," right?
So I'm gonna stop it right there because he starts going in more so on how people and court systems and all that stuff. But getting back to personality, we'll wrap this up. You got to understand, nothing happens in a vacuum. Nothing's finite. There's definitely different occasions where being disagreeable is beneficial. Like I mentioned, in business, you want to combat an offer. If you just go with every offer you're given, you're probably going to lose your business because you're making no money because everyone knows you're a sitting duck to take advantage of, and you're not going to do good. But there's times when you have to say, in the same scenario in business, you got to say, you know what? Maybe I should sit this one out, let my partner lead or let my coworker lead. And that's necessary. Even if you're the boss, you can't always be the lead on the particular case sometimes. But with that being said, like I said, personality is about your default. What are you typically going to be? If I threw a ball at you and you immediately had to react and try to catch it to defend yourself, if you're right-handed, you're probably going to use your right hand. That's how personality is. You can catch with your left hand. You can write with your left hand, throw, whatever, but you're typically going to use your dominant hand. And you're typically going to be an agreeable person. But like she went back and forth with him, and Adam called it out. It's a perfect example of, like I said, why does this help us out if it's not going to add value? So if it does add value, you just got to be mindful of that. When you talk about personality, it's about being able to take what you are and use it to facilitate the best possible plan, the best possible program, and it ensures that it can get the most consistent or the most beneficial outcome. Because with my line of work with performance enhancement, especially when it comes with outcome performances that are like sports, when I work with them, there's an outcome. They need to win games, win fights. When I work with my tactical population, they need to survive. That's literally life or death. And personality traits are very key with them. I work with SWAT teams, understanding how the guy next to you who has your back, they say, I got your six, literally. So how does he or she act? If that's a person that you know is combative, disagreeable, might not be the best outing for you. Or if someone who's less conscientiousness, so that means they're not going to be on time or they're not going to follow through with goals. These are things with personality that people don't look at. It's not just about do I like you or not like you. And getting back to even with the relationships, there's another trait, like I mentioned, neuroticism. Neuroticism is people who don't adapt well to stress, changes. They're very fearful. They're antsy, anxious. This is a person who's high on neuroticism. And Dr. Tashiro talked about how people who are high on neuroticism, that's a predictor of a failure in a relationship. So you can see how these different traits can show things. People talk about the bad boys or things like that. A person who's a quote unquote a bad boy, because they talked about nice guys finish last, and nice guys are typically more agreeable. Bad boys are more disagreeable and they're more neurotic. So that means they're going to do their own thing, but they're going to be worrisome. So think about a guy who might be a cheater. So he's going to do his own thing, not care about you, disagreeable, right? But he's neurotic. So he's going to be worried, like, who you messing with, who you with. It's a bad combination, but it has some appeal. And that's a whole other topic. I talk about the dark triad sometimes. So it kind of goes into there. But the point is, these traits all serve a purpose, but agreeable person, especially a man, he's probably going to facilitate your needs more. But there's a clash of, like the lead attorney talked about, is women typically want the guy who's going to take charge, and you can't go with the flow with everything. So I'll wrap it up with that, guys. This is a pretty interesting clip. I saw this podcast. I'm like, hey, I could take something from this. And I hope you like this new format. I'm going to do different ones still. I'm still finding my way, but I hope you like this. Let me know in the comments if you do. If you have any clips you want me to look at myself, go ahead and put them down below so I can check them out. So thanks, guys, as always, for letting me break it down and get your mind right.